Hello and welcome to Guides.Global. My name's John Howell and I'm the editor. With me today I have Başak Yıldız Orkun, who is a lawyer based here in Turkey. Başak, welcome and thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you for filming me.
Now, you have been working as a lawyer in Turkey now for what, 10 years or more?
Actually, it's a bit more than 10 years. I graduated in 2003, so basically we had a compulsory traineeship, so I started in 2004-5, let's say. So it's about 11-12 years now.
And your firm, Orkun Orkun, specialises in dealing with foreigners.
Foreigners, yes.
So you will have seen many, many times the effect of some of the cultural differences between other countries and Turkey.
Correct, yes, actually. What we are doing is we have multiple national clients, from UK, from Europe, from Arabistan, Saudi Arabia or Russia. So we have very differences in cultures in terms of doing business, yeah.
And of course, each of those cultures, the Russians, the English, the Americans and so on, will see Turkey in a different way.
Yes, I believe so. Some cultures are more close to Turkish culture, some of them are quite different.
And what do you think are the main differences people see between Turkey and their own country?
Okay. The way of that we do the business is a bit different because we are really relying on trust, first of all. And we expect all people to be really open and trustworthy.
And that, I think, is a very important point, isn't it? Because the perception of Turkey in some other places is that it's a country where it is dangerous to do business. Mm-hmm. But in reality, when you're dealing with Turks, when you shake your hand, that is usually a deal that is done.
Exactly, and it is obviously not only the culture, it is in our legislation as well, because we would expect people to act in a goodwill. This is our civil code, and also in our code of commerce, we would expect the commercial parties to be in a goodwill and fair. So I think, this is not only the cultural thing, it is obviously a legal thing as well.
And the people watching this video will no doubt have done business in lots of other countries where that is not true. Lots of countries where you shake hands on a deal and every day the other person has tried to change it all the way up to the time when you sign the title and even beyond. So in Turkey, it is a more straightforward, more trusting relationship.
Exactly, and also we are accepting the contracts in writing and verbal in some field, in some fields. So even if it's a word, it is still binding.
And I suppose we must say, mustn't we, that just because you can very often trust working with Turkish people doesn't mean to say you don't need a contract.
Of course, it would be really not legally correct, I would say, because the contrast, obviously some of the contrast has to be in writing anyway. What I was just trying to say is trust comes first in Turkey, and obviously we have a legal system which is adopted mostly from Europe, so you should be also following the legal steps to make the relation more strong and legally binding.
Yes, and it's perhaps also worth mentioning that sometimes some of the foreign people who are based here in Turkey perhaps are not quite as trustworthy as some of the Turkish people are. So you have to be a little bit careful. Most of the fraud everywhere in the world, British people defraud British people, Americans defraud Americans, Germans defraud Germans.
Actually, what we call it, there are bad people in every country.
Yes.
We have bad people as well. So you always have to be careful. And as you are doing a business in a different country, I think it makes a lot of sense to have a legal advice, tax advice in the first place, because trust is somewhere, but it's not protecting you.
Yes. Okay, so that's a good first point about trust. What else do people see different here in Turkey?
The paperwork might be different, and also obviously the authorities may differ. In some countries, some authorities are dealing with some specific works, but in Turkey it might be different. Let's give an example. Most of the European people are expecting to sign the title deed at the notaries, but in Turkey it is title deed office. So there are also differences in terms of procedures.
So the procedures are different.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean to say they're worse, they're just different.
Just different.
And in fact, in certain cases, the Tapu office, title deed office is a great example. I think it's far better than many other systems.
Yeah.
So you have to adapt to the local systems.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. What about the effect of the size of the country? Very often when people are dealing with big countries, and Turkey's a big country, they find that things work differently in one place than they do in another place. Does that happen in Turkey?
Not really. I would say no, because most of our procedural systems are now on a computer based.
Yes.
So basically we have like let's give an example. For example, for the title deed transfer, we have now a computer system which is linked to all title deed offices all over Turkey. So I would say the procedure will not differ. Maybe the timing might differ, because in some places such as Istanbul, there are many let's say transfers, or the workload is more than the tiny city in the Anatolia. So the timing might be different, but the procedure will be the same.
And of course, another reason why the procedure doesn't change very much is that a judge will be sent to the east of Turkey for 3 years, 4 years, and then his next job will be in the west of Turkey, and the next job could be in Ankara. So they're all moving around and keeping the system the same.
Yeah, exactly. And it is not only the judge, actually it is applying to all officers.
Exactly,
almost.
everybody.
So everybody, the notaries, the officers.
The whole of the public service.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes. So that means that although you're dealing with a huge country, you can be comfortable about the fact that basically things are going to be the same everywhere.
I totally agree, yeah.
Yes. What about the attitude to time? Many Westerners are horrified when they go to some countries and do business, and they find that people turn up 3 hours late for an appointment and so on. How does that work in Turkey?
No, actually, if it is the business, normally people are punctual and they are on time. So, of course, we might have a bit timing problem when you are dealing with the bureaucracy. You might be waiting a little bit longer, but I think it's the same everywhere.
Yes.
I mean, it's not only the Turkey. But I got your point, especially in the Middle East of the world, the timing is not that important. But in Turkey, it doesn't work like this. So, if it's a business, people are normally punctual and come on time.
I suppose in some ways you could say that whilst most of Turkey is located in Asia, its mindset is not an Asian mindset, is it?
No. Actually, we are just Asia and Europe, and we got our, I think, business culture from Europe instead of Asia, I would say.
Yes. What about language? Turkish is not an easy language.
Yes.
And not many people in business at a high level speak English to a good standard.
I think this could be a challenge.
Yes, lots and lots of young people speak it well, but when you get to people who are 40 and 50 and 60, it's perhaps less common.
Yeah, less common, and they are very traditional, so they never needed to learn another language to do business, because and obviously it wasn't really common to do the trading abroad 40 years ago. So yes, language could be the challenge, and not only the business people, sometimes officers will not be speaking good English.
Yes.
So you might need assistance, a professional assistance, such as sworn translators. So this is a sort of a downside.
And the Turkish system is really quite efficient, isn't it, in the way in which it deals with translation, because whether you go to the notary or the court, they've all got their bank of official accredited translators.
Correct. And the translators without the credit, what we call them sworn translators, by the way, they give an oath. It's not going to be accepted before the Turkish authorities. So, but you can easily find a translator, because all notaries has their own list. So when you go to a notary, they will call the translator straight away. Or to the title deed office, when you go there, they are just arranging the translator, and their rates are quite competitive, I would say.
Yes.
Yeah, it's affordable.
But if you are going to do business in Turkey, or you're going to come to live in Turkey, then you really do need to do something about getting to grips with the language. Either you learn it yourself or you have to employ somebody who's going to help you with it.
Yeah, what I would say is actually in some certain areas of Turkey, such as Istanbul, Ankara, the Aegean side, the big cities, I think you would be okay, because now we are really got used to have like expats living in Turkey. But if you are going to be living in the in Anatolia or far east of Turkey, then I would say you would definitely need them.
Yes, different situation altogether.
Yes, exactly. So,
final thing I wanted to touch on here is about the changes that have happened in Turkey over the last few years. Turkey in 2017 is a very different place from Turkey in 2005, 2006, isn't it?
Yeah.
Almost everything to do with government can now be dealt with online. Yeah. Things happen much more quickly. Things that I can remember taking 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks are now done in one day.
Correct.
So people who might have had business dealings with Turkey some time ago need to understand that they're now dealing with a much more modern, much more organised country than was the case then.
Yeah, I'm glad that we managed to adopt ourselves with the technology. So that's very good, because that's basically how the things will be much easier in terms of if you are doing business abroad. And now we have, and you can, as you mentioned, we have a very settled online system. So everything could be really done online now.
So Başak, is there anything else you think is really important about the Turkish culture which surprises people who either come to live here or come to do business here?
Surprising, I wouldn't say surprise, but I would still say that I think there are minor differences. It's not going to be surprising any European citizen or like a Middle Eastern, doesn't matter. We are just because in between. So we have both cultures in one place. So you are not going to be surprised, but obviously there will be some minor changes. And I think one of them is we rely on trust. So we would expect people to take some initiatives. So that might be a little bit scary when you are here. You will think that, oh, they are going too far, but it's not really like that, because we like to take initiatives if we trust the other people, and we would expect the other party to do the same thing. But nowadays, lawyers are much more involved with the business, so I think it is also going to be sorted in a smooth way.
Başak, thank you.
Thank you.
Başak has written our written guide to the cultural differences involving Turkey, and she's also written her book about how things really work in Turkey. So we urge you to look at both of those, both of course on www.Guides.Global. If you've liked this video, please like us or follow us, and whether you do that or not, we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you and goodbye.